DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And on this podcast, and on this menu, this evening, we have some appetizers for you. And I'm talking about this will be the reaction show for UFC 259 Prochazka versus Pereira, which was held on Saturday, November 11th, 2023. And that was at the grand stage of them all, Madison Square Garden, New York City, and of course the United States. And there were 19,039 in attendance, and total gate was around 12.5 million. So this card, I was kind of hating on it a little bit, because of its lack of star power after losing John Jones and Stipe Miocic, not just one of them, but both of them. So you kind of lost your star power, even though you still had two title bouts on the card. But these are more like for newer fighters, that are kind of in their prime, and just now, everyone kind of knows about these guys, and some of them coming back from injury, so you hadn't seen them in a while. So I felt it lost some of its elite fighter power, even though it turned out to be an amazing card. Every single fight on the main card, the pay-per-view, was a TKO or KO. So it doesn't get much more exciting than that, unless you're just someone that loves the wrestling, the grappling, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu game, and you like to see submissions and kind of that lay and pray type of style. But you didn't get to see any of that on this card. Yeah, let's get into this, because I made some picks prior to this too, and I with how I thought this card was going to be, whether I thought it was going to be good or not, or have good fights on it. I did pretty bad in that prediction, but I also didn't do great in my fight predictions either. So it might get a little comical go rehashing these picks. But anyways, let's get into this. So can I get a menu? And so the first fight was a featherweight bout between Diego Lopez versus Pat Sabatini, and it ended up ending by a KO punch at 1 minute and 30 seconds of the first round. And I originally predicted this to just go to unanimous decision or split decision, because I thought both of these fighters had similar records and similar histories of, they've never been submitted before. The majority of their fights have come by submission, but they've, at the same time, neither one of them had ever been submitted, and they'd only been finished like maybe a couple times by knockout. So I thought that this fight would probably just go split decision, and I picked Pat Sabatini, and he looked good overall early on in this fight against Diego Lopez, but it just seemed like he seemed like Diego Lopez was just kind of on a different level in the striking game, because they came out and it looked like Pat Sabatini maybe had the power advantage, with not punching power or kicking power necessarily, but the wrestling power. And they started out and threw some punches, and then Pat Sabatini wasn't winning the exchanges in the striking game. So then he attempted a takedown, but wasn't able to complete the takedown or change the level of the fight, and he just couldn't handle Diego Lopez's striking, and he just kind of folded and went to sleep under uh, Diego Lopez's pressure. But yeah, that was an exciting way to start off the fight, start off the pay-per-view card, the main card, and start off the night. Seeing a fighter that probably has a lot of potential, Diego Lopez. I didn't really remember his name off the top of my head when going through these predictions originally, but when I saw him, I remembered who he was, and I wish I could have changed my pick because then I knew who he was when I saw him, and he may be a up and coming young star contender in the featherweight division. Very impressive win by him, and to get it by knockout is impressive. Seeing how the majority of his fights are by submission. All right, on to the second fight of the night. I had, let's see, this was a lightweight bout between Benoit Saint-Denis versus Matt Frevola. And it's funny. That's very surprising now seeing this time stamp for this and time stat. It ended at a minute and 31 seconds, so a minute longer. It went a minute longer than the Diego Lopez Pat Sabatini fight, and that ended in the first round. So just 1 second longer, and and it ended with KO head kick, a very impressive finish at the end of that fight. But I had predicted that I thought that fight was going to be a submission. I thought Benoit Saint-Denis was going to win by submission because he has a lot of fights that have been by decision, and he had just 13 wins, and in his 13, he had 12 wins at the time, and in those 12 wins, he had 9 submission and only 3 knockouts. So I didn't think that was going to be the way that he was going to win this fight, but he looked scary and big at that weight class, and that was an impressive head kick that he landed on Freebola. But yeah, that fight just kind of started similar to the Pat Sabatini Diego Lopez fight. They just just kind of looked like a kickboxing match early on, and then St. Denis started getting the better of it, and kind of as he's defending and falling away, Freebola just catches the ankle and foot of St. Denis like right on the side of the head. Some people are saying it was like one of the cleanest head kicks they'd ever seen, but I've seen cleaner ones where it's like shin to temple type of hit. This was one where I was a little surprised it knocked him out because it was more like foot and ankle than it was like shin to temple. But still, a very impressive KO head kick. Like it wasn't like KO head kick punches or punches head kick or a TKO head kick. Like this was like a complete knockout head kick, like looking like Mirko Cro Cop type style. But that was impressive, and that was one of the few fights that I picked on the night as a winner, but didn't get the way that I thought it was going to go. Right, and then on to the third bout on the card. It's a women's strawweight bout between Jessica Andrade versus Mackenzie Dern. And this fight, I had picked it originally for Mackenzie Dern to win by submission, because she's been on kind of a hot streak of getting some wins by decision. She's had 7 of them in her career and never had any knockouts before. So I thought that might be how this fight goes, but it didn't. It actually went more in the way that I wanted it to go, because I'm kind of a fan of Jessica Andrade, and she ended up winning by the typical way that she wins, and that's by the the distinct power advantage in the striking game that she possesses over the majority of her opponents. And so Jessica Andrade, I picked Mackenzie Dern to win by submission, but she actually lost to Jessica Andrade by TKO punches at 3 minutes and 15 seconds of the second round. And that was actually a pretty dominant performance by Jessica Andrade because the fight was kept on the ground, where Jessica Andrade wanted the fight to be, even though Mackenzie Dern tried like maybe just like once or twice to try to take Jessica Andrade down, but Jessica Andrade did a great job of defending the takedown and just landing punches. Like Mackenzie Dern looked very amateur. She looked like an amateur striker. And Jessica Andrade in there with Jessica Andrade didn't look like she really even deserved to be in there. And I think she was really lucky to even make it out of the first round because Jessica Andrade had her on skates at the end of the round and was throwing a flurry of punches at the very end of the round. And when she finally knocked her out, TKO punched her and knocked her out with those punches, it looked like she almost just kind of wilted and gave up. She was already very affected. She had kind of already wobbly at the end of the first round. So there was really no question that Jessica Andrade was going to finish her in the next round. But that was maybe one of the most impressive victories on the main card. Because Jessica Andrade just looked like she was on a different level than Mackenzie Dern, made her look like an amateur. But yeah, I was happy to see that because I'm a fan of Jessica Andrade. It's impressive that there's very very few women in the 115 pound weight division that have like true knockout, like one punch knockout ability. And I just thought maybe just because Jessica Andrade was kind of on a losing streak that would just continue, but she had a very impressive performance, and I was happy to see that. All right, onto the heavyweight bout. This was for the pretty sure that was for the interim heavyweight bout between, let's see, what was it? Yeah, so it was the interim heavyweight bout, and the light heavyweight championship is just vacant. Okay, so it's an interim heavyweight bout between Tom Aspinall versus Sergey Pavlovich, and just like a lot of these fights on this card, they were just kind of like kickboxing bouts, and so I've only picked one fight right on this card out of the 5 total fights on the main card. And in this one, I picked Sergey Pavlovich to win by knockout. And I thought, and if he didn't win by knockout, someone was getting knocked out. That's all I really knew about this fight, because both of these fighters are both, up and coming stars in the heavyweight division. Pretty much were on winning streaks and had only been beat or either undefeated or only both of them had only been beat like once. And Tom Aspinall's was more due to a TKO, more due to a knee injury than it was an outright knockout. So I just felt someone was going to get knocked out, and I leaned more towards Sergey Pavlovich, and I ended up being wrong. He ended up getting knocked out of there with punches at 1 minute and 9 seconds of the first round. And just like a lot of these fights, it was just basically a kickboxing match. And there was one point early on in some of the early fights, early strikes and exchanges between Tom Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich. It looked like Sergey Pavlovich got the better of some of the early ones and looked like he had Tom Aspinall rocked a little bit. And then, how you get a little wild and a little overconfident when you kind of look like you get the edge in the stand-up game early on. He just got caught and got up against the cage and put down with it was basically like a one punch knockout, like knocked him down and he just fell kind of backward stiff, and Tom Aspinall landed a couple hammer fists, and it was over. But that was an exciting fight. That was just one of those fights where you're just waiting for the big explosion. You're just waiting for someone to go to sleep, and this fight, it did not disappoint, because that's exactly what it did, what happened. I wonder what the odds were for either this fight ending in the first round, or it actually making it to the second round, or if ever even possible, actually going all 5 rounds. But no, it was exactly what it was billed up to be, and it was some big time knockout by some heavyweights. All right, and now on to the main event here. I am at this point on the night. I am 1-3. I only picked Benoit Saint Denis to win. So I am 1-3 on the night. But maybe the main event could save me a little bit, give me a little more respect. Make my picks and my total results, my total record on the night a little more respectable. So the main event was a light heavyweight vacant championship bout between Alex Pereira Putain versus Jiri Prochazka, and I picked Alex Pereira to win this fight by knockout, and that was really only one of the only ones where I was kind of definitive on knowing like I'm pretty sure Alex Pereira is going to get the knockout over Jiri Prochazka, and if he doesn't get the knockout, someone is going to get knocked out in probably the first 2 rounds. So I thought it was a very similar matchup to the Tom Aspinall Sergey Pavlovich matchup, and just they're heavy-handed fighters, and that's what they want to do. A knockout is going to happen, but it was actually a little surprising because early on it was just kind of like like almost all the fights on this card was just kind of a kickboxing bout, and it looked like Jiri Prochazka got the better of it there for a moment, and in the first round, you could say maybe he pulled it off because it looked like he had Alex Pereira a little shook for a moment, but then Alex Pereira came right back and had Jiri Prochazka in some trouble, and then he actually ended up going for a takedown. Jiri Prochazka he went for a takedown and did a good job of just controlling Alex Pereira, like just holding him down. He was never really able to land much ground and pound or get an attempt at a submission or anything like that. But what was impressive was after being held down the majority of the first round, Alex Pereira was able to actually get back up with like 30 seconds left to kind of regain some respect of that round, and maybe pull it out, because he definitely inflicted the most damage in that round, because Jiri Prochazka wasn't able to really land anything in the first round while they were on the ground. No ground and pound or submission attempts. But then it gets to the second round, and you can tell that Alex Pereira has the advantage in the striking game, and Jiri Prochazka tries to go for another takedown or two and isn't really able to, and they kind of get wrapped up to where both of them are kind of like leaning up on against the cage, and Jiri Prochazka has his head down, and Alex Pereira just starts landing like elbows and punches nonstop to where Yari's just trying to keep his head down and defend himself, but then he ends up going to the ground and is kind of like on his knees, and Alex Pereira is still throwing punches and elbows, and Jiri Prochazka like falls backwards into being full mounted by Alex Pereira, and Alex Pereira is about to land some more probably devastating ground and pound, and then it gets broken up by the referee, and Uh, it looked like you could maybe argue that it was a little early because it would have been kind of nice to see how it would have played out with Alex Pereira getting Jiri Prochazka in the full mount, but uh, it probably was unnecessary. But people, anytime it looks a little like it's a little bit of an early stoppage or a little bit of a late stoppage, people are always going to have something to say. But in the end, the only thing that really matters was during Prochazka's uh, post-fight interview and having lost by TKO and not being able to regain his light heavyweight championship bout. Had to there may have been some a language barrier there a little bit because me personally, if I was him or his manager, I wouldn't have wanted him to admit this, because it may kind of hurt his chances as maybe getting an automatic rematch or possibly another fight for the belt sooner than he might now. But he actually admitted that he was out and that it was a good stoppage. So in the end, people can complain and blame and say that the ref didn't let Jiri Prochazka have like that one extra second to see if he could work his way out of it, because you got to give champions and fighters and championship bouts a little more benefit of the doubt. But it didn't happen that way. So his opinion is really the only one that matters. The fans doesn't really matter because they weren't the ones getting their heads beat in with elbows to the side of the head and punches, and was probably going to get even worse by getting full mounted. But yeah, this card was exciting, even though I only went 2 and 3 on the main card. But this was an exciting card. A lot of finishes. The entire main card pay-per-view was finishes, and every fighter in one of those fights. One was let's see, won a performance of the night bonus. So that tells you how exciting each finish was. But this usually happens when I'm down talk a fight, say that it doesn't have very good fights on it or it doesn't have very much star power, and it's just like, I'm a fan of Alex Pereira, but not a huge fan of really anyone else, and just thinking it just kind of overlooking this card, and it ended up being one of the better cards of the year so far as we head towards the end of the year. So it'd be interesting to see where Alex Pereira goes if he's going to fight Jamal Hill next, or if Tom Aspinall is going to get a fight with John Jones, or if the bout between John Jones and Stipe Miocic is going to be rebooked. But anyways, it was a good card, and I hope everyone else out there enjoyed it. And just for the next event, let's see here. The next event, hopefully, I can do a little bit better. See when the next event is. It's in a couple weeks. It may be even more than a month from now. Yeah, it's about five weeks from now. It's on, or a month from now, a little more than a month from now, because it's on December 16th, 2023. And that's Edwards versus Covington versus Alexander Pantoja versus Brandon Royval. And that's another card that doesn't seem like overly exciting or great. There'll be some talking, some trash talking leading into it, because you got Kobe Covington on the card, but not an overly exciting card either. But I'm ready for it. I'm here for it, and it'll probably turn out to be better than what I expect, just like this card did. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So can I get a check, please?